What would you do if your own father looked across the Thanksgiving table, called you a leech, and told you to leave the very house your paycheck kept running? If you've ever lived through or even witnessed a story like this, share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. And if you're still watching this video from the very beginning, drop a comment to let me know you're here with me. Your support helps keep these stories alive. What would you do if your own father looked across the Thanksgiving table, called you a leech, and told you to leave the very house your paycheck kept running? If you've ever lived through or even witnessed a story like this, share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. And if you're still watching this video from the very beginning, drop a comment to let me know you're here with me. Your support helps keep these stories alive. The clink of silverware should have been comforting, a familiar soundtrack to Thanksgiving night in suburban Columbus, Ohio. The golden turkey sat in the center of the table, glossy with butter, surrounded by steaming bowls of mashed potatoes, green beans, and my own sweet potato casserole. I had been in the kitchen since sunrise, chopping, basting, whipping, and baking, while my family sprawled across the couch, with the television blaring the football game. I thought this year might be different. I thought sharing my promotion at the firm would finally shift how they saw me. Instead, my father's voice sliced through the warmth like a carving knife gone dull. "You're nothing but a leech," Frank said, his fork stabbing at the turkey. "It's time you left this house." The words hung in the air, heavier than any storm cloud. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. The casserole suddenly looked foreign, unappetizing, like something placed in front of a stranger. Silence swallowed the room. The antique wall clock ticked from the living room, tick-tock, tick, a sound I knew too well because I'd paid for its repair last spring. I searched my mother's face for rescue, for any hint of protest. Denise wouldn't even look at me. She moved her green beans around her plate like a bored child. My 17-year-old sister Tessa stared hard at her water glass, her lips pressed tight. What made the moment cut so deep wasn't just my father's venom, it was the timing. Only minutes earlier, I had announced my promotion, heart swelling with pride. Now, in the glow of the lights I paid the bill for, I was declared unwelcome. The irony stung. My name was on the electric bill, the water account, the groceries stacked in our fridge. Even the insurance statement that covered Mom's doctor's visits last month bore my name. For 3 months, I had poured every paycheck into this house after Mom lost her accounting job. Utilities, food, car insurance, even medical costs. I had covered it all while Dad's part-time shifts barely kept the mortgage afloat. Each month, another bill moved under my name. Each month, Dad's silence grew heavier, his resentment sharper. And now he wanted me gone. I swallowed hard, my hands trembling only slightly, and set down my fork. "I understand perfectly," I said, calm and steady. The room shivered with those 3 words. Dad blinked, thrown off balance, his knuckles whitening around his fork. Mom finally spoke, but not to defend me. "Blair," she said softly, "you'll still handle the insurance this month, won't you? I've got an appointment Tuesday." A knife to the heart would have hurt less. In that instant, the truth crystallized. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a wallet. A signature. I gathered Tessa's empty glass and my own plate, carried them to the kitchen. She brushed her fingers lightly against my wrist as she followed, her small, silent gesture of solidarity. It was the closest thing to love I had felt in months. Later that night, my suitcase lay open on the bed, half filled with folded sweaters. I packed with mechanical precision, my mind buzzing with 1,000 unfinished thoughts. Sleep was impossible. I reached for the stack of receipts and financial records in my desk drawer, planning to take what I needed. That's when I noticed something. I shouldn't have a bank statement with Frank's name. It wasn't mine. It wasn't supposed to be there. And yet, there it was, peeking out from beneath my documents. What I saw next made my blood run cold. The glow from my desk lamp spread across the room in soft circles, illuminating the stacks of paper I had dragged from the drawer. At first, I thought I was just exhausted, misreading what I held in my hands. But as I traced the numbers again, the truth burned clear. The bank statement wasn't mine. It was Frank's. My father, who had called me a leech not 12 hours ago, had an account I'd never seen before. The balance climbed steadily month after month. $4,000 in July, $5,000 in August, nearly $7,000 now in November. I flipped through the small stack of statements, my fingers trembling. My own savings account, drained to barely $760 after paying for their food, utilities, and Mom's appointments. His quietly swelling in secret. Beneath the papers lay a glossy brochure from an Ohio river boat dealer, the kind with pictures of shining fiberglass hulls and chrome details. Scribbled notes filled the margins in my father's tight blue handwriting. Down payment, $5,500. Scheduled delivery after Thanksgiving. A fishing boat. While I cut coupons and stretched ramen noodles to pay for his mortgage, he had been saving for a fishing boat. I sat heavily on the edge of the bed, the brochure trembling in my hands. Betrayal doesn't come with warning bells. It seeps in slowly, until you're drowning in it. The door creaked open. Tessa slipped inside, wearing her flannel pajamas, her hair mussed from sleep. She froze when she saw the open suitcase. The papers fanned across the bed. "You're really leaving?" she whispered. I nodded, unable to find words. Her eyes darted to the bank statements in my lap, then back to my face. I should tell you something." Her voice wavered. She pressed herself against the door like she needed a quick escape. "I heard them planning this weeks ago. They said they'd wait until you paid all the bills for November. After that, they didn't need you anymore." The words landed like a blow. "You knew?" My voice cracked before I could stop it. Tessa's eyes welled. "I was scared, Blair. Dad said anyone who warned you would be next." Anger should have rushed in, but what I felt was heavier. Sorrow. She was 17, caught in the same web I'd lived in for years. Her silence wasn't betrayal, it was survival. "There's more," she whispered, glancing nervously toward the hallway. "Those medical appointments Mom's been having? The ones you've been paying for?" My stomach tightened. "What about them?" Tessa mimicked Mom's exaggerated eye roll. "Last week she came home with her lips all puffy. Said the doctor told her no straws for 2 days. Blair, it wasn't a checkup. It was fillers." The room tilted. All those insurance premiums I'd stretched my paycheck to cover cosmetic procedures. I pulled up my banking app, showing Tessa the number on the screen, $763.42. Just 3 months ago, over $9,000 had sat there. "This is all I have left," I told her, my throat tight. If I'd stayed 1 more month, I'd have nothing. Tessa reached for the papers scattered on my bed, receipts for the refrigerator I'd bought in July, her laptop, the utility bills in my name. She turned them over with shaking hands, whispering, "You kept everything?" "Of course," I said. "Proof. They'll try to spin the story, but I have proof." Her voice cracked. "What would you do if you were me? Stay quiet and keep peace? Or stand up and risk losing everything?" The question pierced deeper than she realized, because that's exactly where I stood, between silence and confrontation, between family and freedom. I slid the stack of bank statements into my purse, my decision not yet made. "I don't know, Tess," I admitted. "But I do know this. Whatever happens next, I can't let them drain me anymore." The antique clock in the living room chimed 2 a.m., its echo pulsing through the walls. Tessa startled at the sound, as though it might summon Frank's heavy footsteps down the hall. I zipped my suitcase closed, my hands steady this time. Tomorrow I would walk out of this house. But whether I left quietly or confronted them with the truth, I wasn't sure yet. Morning came gray and brittle, the kind of November sky that feels heavy with snow but gives nothing. By then, my suitcase was already in the trunk of my car, receipts and bank statements sealed in a folder under my arm. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't need to. Cleveland was 2 hours north, and Drew Carter welcomed me with the kind of quiet warmth I hadn't felt in years. Her apartment smelled faintly of coffee and lavender cleaning spray, sunlight slanting across secondhand furniture. "Stay as long as you need," she said, pressing a mug into my hands. Max, her roommate, grinned from behind a mountain of takeout boxes. "We'll make room. Don't worry." For the first time, I exhaled without feeling guilty. That night, lying on Drew's pull-out couch, I told myself I'd crossed the border into safety, but safety, it turned out, was fragile. 3 nights later, the pounding began. Bang, bang, bang. the apartment door shuddered under the weight of each blow. I bolted upright, heart hammering. Drew appeared in the hall in her scrubs, eyes wide. Max froze mid-stride, his dog barking furiously at the sound. Then came the voice, loud, raw, familiar. "Blair! Open this door right now." My father. I moved toward the door, every instinct telling me not to, but the pull of decades stronger than logic. Through the peephole I saw him, face flushed crimson, jaw tight, rage vibrating through his shoulders. He pounded again, each strike rattling the frame. "I know you're in there. You think you can just walk out? You think you can abandon your family after all we've done for you?" His voice cracked with fury. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly woman across the hall, peeked out of her doorway. Her robe hung loose around her thin frame. "Young man," she called shakily, "you stop this at once. I've already called building security." "Mind your business, lady," Frank barked, spinning toward her. "This is between me and my daughter. This is everyone's business when you disturb the peace." She snapped, retreating but not before giving me a pointed look, one that seemed to say, "Stand your ground." My hands shook as I dialed 911. "My father is trying to break into my apartment," I whispered to the dispatcher, even as another thunderous kick splintered the wood near the lock. "You can't hide behind strangers, Blair," he shouted. "Open this door or I swear." The elevator dinged, cutting him off. Heavy footsteps thundered down the hall. "Sir, step away from the door immediately," a deep voice commanded. 2 building security officers rushed forward. Frank whirled, fists clenched. "She's my daughter, I have every right." "You have no right to damage property or threaten residents," one officer said firmly. "Police are on their way." The wail of sirens grew closer, echoing against the concrete outside. Frank's voice, once booming, slipped into frantic growls. "She's destroying this family, she's ungrateful. Everything she has is because of me." But the words no longer had power. Not here, not with uniformed officers between us. Minutes later, I watched through the peephole as 2 police officers cuffed his wrists behind his back. He kept shouting my name, kept hurling accusations, but the hall swallowed his voice as they dragged him toward the elevator. When Officer Rodriguez returned for my statement, I forced my hands to still against the pen and paper. I told him everything: the financial manipulation, the hidden account, the harassment. My voice surprised me. Calm, precise, like reading from a ledger. "Would you like to file for a restraining order?" he asked gently. I stared at the cracked doorframe, splinters scattered like bones on the carpet. For 29 years, I had bent, yielded, tried to make myself smaller to keep the peace. And now, my father had brought his war to my doorstep. "Yes," I said. "I want to press charges. And I want protection." Rodriguez nodded, jotting it down. Behind him, Drew placed a steady hand on my shoulder. Max knelt to calm his barking dog, but his eyes flicked to me with quiet respect. The moment Frank was escorted into the squad car should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the ground shifting beneath me. Because I knew this wasn't the end. People like my father don't retreat quietly. And I was right. The very next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. "Mom pawned your laptop and camera. Said it's collateral for what you owe. Parkway Pawn on 4th Street. Parkway Pawn looked like every other pawn shop in Cleveland, buzzing fluorescent lights, barred windows, shelves stacked with guitars and power tools. But on this Saturday morning, the glass case in front held pieces of my life. My laptop, my camera, priceless not for their resale value, but for what they represented. My work, my voice, my freedom. Officer Williams stood beside me, uniform crisp, notepad tucked under her arm. She scanned my receipts, the serial numbers, the dated invoices, the credit card slips, and gave a short nod. "These are solid," she said. "You've got enough proof to file this as theft. Let's get them back." The pawnbroker, a heavy-set man with tired eyes, frowned as he matched the serial numbers to his intake records. "Yeah, these came in 2 days ago," he admitted. "Signed by Denise Thompson. Sold them for $300. He pushed the paperwork across the counter. "Legally, if you've got proof they're yours, I have to release them to you. We'll deal with her later." I signed the reclaim form with steady hands. As he set my laptop and camera on the counter, something in me shifted. For the first time in months, maybe years. I felt the ground firming beneath my feet. Back at the house in Columbus, though, that ground shook again. I had returned, not to reconcile, but to gather the last of my belongings under police escort. The sight of Officer Williams' cruiser in the driveway drew curtains twitching across the street. Neighbors I'd grown up around now had front-row seats to the unraveling. Inside, Denise waited in the hallway, arms crossed, lips pursed. "That furniture belongs to the family," she snapped as I carried a box from my bedroom. "You can't just take everything." I pulled the folder from my tote and flipped it open. Receipts for every piece I'm taking. The desk, the bookshelf, even the refrigerator. Paid for on my card. I held the papers up, my voice flat but unyielding. Officer Williams skimmed the documents, then looked at my mother. "Ma'am, your daughter's provided clear evidence of purchase. These items are hers." For the first time, Denise faltered. Her eyes darted toward the living room, but she said nothing. I moved quickly, boxing up books, clothes, files, each item labeled with proof. Each object reclaimed felt like a small piece of myself returned. And then I heard the low rumble of an engine pulling into the driveway. I froze, box in hand, and looked out the window. My car. The one I'd parked safely at Drew's apartment, now rolling up the drive with Frank at the wheel. He stepped out, jingling my spare keys like a prize. His grin was sharp, triumphant. "We need to discuss what you owe us before you take this too," he said, gesturing at the vehicle I had worked years to pay off. I set the box down slowly, pulling another paper from my folder. The title? The registration. Both bearing my name. "This car is mine," I said evenly. Officer Williams stepped forward, hand outstretched. "Sir, that vehicle is registered to Blair Thompson. Hand over the keys immediately." Frank's color drained as his eyes flicked between the document and the officer. His grip on the keys tightened. "I paid for her braces. Her college. 18 years of—" "The keys, Mr. Thompson," Williams interrupted, voice sharp. For the first time, my father's shoulders slumped. His fist opened. The keys fell into the officer's palm with a metallic jingle. As she passed them to me, something broke inside him. The man who had towered over my life for decades suddenly looked small, diminished. His fury shrank into silence. I curled my fingers around the keys, my voice steady and clear. "Come near me or my property again, and I'll file for a restraining order." Outside, neighbors lingered on porches, no longer pretending to check their mail. They were witnesses now, not to his authority, but to its collapse. I slid behind the wheel, adjusted the mirror, and turned the ignition. As I pulled away, I saw Tessa in the doorway, one hand raised in a tentative wave, her face torn between sorrow and something else, admiration maybe. The strength she hadn't yet found for herself. The road stretched out ahead, open and quiet. But as my phone buzzed in the cup holder, the screen lit up with a new message from Tessa. "They're blaming me now. What do I do?" The air in Cleveland felt different, cleaner somehow. Maybe it was just the distance, 2 hours of highway between me and the house I no longer called home. Drew's apartment was cramped, the couch sagged in the middle, and Max's dog shed golden fur on every surface. But it was safe, and safety, after everything, felt like luxury. I opened a new checking account at the credit union, transferred the last of my savings into it, and began the slow work of changing passwords, canceling automatic payments, and cutting every financial tether still binding me to my parents. Each click of the keyboard was a quiet declaration: I belong to myself now. But freedom never comes uncontested. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with a call I almost ignored. The caller ID read, "Mom." Against my better judgment, I answered. "Blair." Denise's voice trembled, low and urgent. "What have you done?" "The power's out, the internet's down. My insurance was declined. You can't just abandon us like this, we're your family." I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. "I stopped paying for things that aren't my responsibility, Mom. You can't mean that." Her tone shifted, softening into false sweetness. "If you drop that ridiculous theft report, you can come home. Your room's exactly how you left it. We'll let you live here, of course. We'll let you." as if I should be grateful. Silence stretched, and then her voice sharpened. And Blair, Frank and I have been concerned about your state of mind. The stress, the decisions you're making, it doesn't look stable. Our friends, our family, they'd understand if you were having a breakdown better than they'd understand. This story you're spinning, it's not Leah's in descender. Next for Marquez helpen instituted honors of Blaun. The threat was naked, wrapped in feigned concern. Drop the charges or be branded unstable. I steadied my breath. I have copies of every bill I've paid. I have bank statements showing the transfers to your account. I have texts asking me to cover cosmetic procedures you called medical necessities. Would you like me to share that with the police? Or the rest of the family? The line went quiet. No excuses this time, no shifting blame. Just silence. Goodbye, Mom, I said and hung up. When I told Drew, she stared at me over her steaming mug of tea. That wasn't a compromise, she said. That was blackmail. I know. My voice cracked, but not from weakness, more like something breaking free. The next morning, I sat in the corner of the credit union lobby, sliding the folder of documents across the counter to the manager. I want every account secured. Fraud alerts, verification codes, in-person ID checks only. The manager glanced at the paperwork, eyebrows raised. You've been thorough, he said. Smart to protect yourself. We'll flag everything. When I stepped outside, the November air cut cold across my cheeks. But my chest felt lighter. Each safeguard was a brick in the wall. I was building protection not of anger, but of necessity. That night, Drew leaned against the doorframe as I typed at my laptop. How does it feel? She asked. Strange, I admitted. Like I'm finally steering my own life. All down to prison drown. Before she could reply, a thunderous knock rattled the door. My stomach clenched instantly. But this time, when Max checked the peephole, it wasn't Frank. It was the delivery man dropping off the new deadbolt lock and small security camera system Drew had ordered. Still, my hands shook as I signed for the package. Trauma lingers, even when the danger is gone. Later, curled on the couch, I stared at my phone lying face down on the table. For the first time in weeks, I didn't dread it lighting up. No call could force me back. No threat could undo the boundaries I'd drawn. But then, as if summoned by thought, the screen lit anyway. A text from Tessa. They're saying you've lost your mind. That you made it all up. I don't know who to believe anymore. I typed, deleted, typed again, my thumb hovering over send. Because what could I say to a 17-year-old still stuck in the house I'd barely escaped? The lease was nothing fancy, just a one-page agreement for a third-floor walk-up in a Cleveland neighborhood where the sidewalks cracked and the radiators hissed like restless ghosts. But as I turned the key for the first time, a thrill rippled through me. The space was mine. Every square foot, every wall, every bill. Mine. Drew and Max helped carry in the boxes. Baxter, the golden retriever, trotting happily between us with his tail like a feather duster. The furniture was sparse, a thrift store table, mismatched chairs. The sagging couch Drew insisted I take, but when I set my receipts and laptop on the counter, it felt like the foundation of a new life. Not bad, Thompson, Max said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Sure beats your parents' palace of misery. I laughed, the sound sharp and unfamiliar. It had been months since laughter felt natural. For days, I painted walls, unpacked, filled the fridge with exactly what I wanted: grapes, yogurt, cold brew coffee, little luxuries that tasted like freedom. I sat cross-legged on the floor and sorted my mail. Electricity, water, renter's insurance, all bills in my name. But this time, they didn't feel like chains. They felt like proof that I existed on my own terms. Still, ghosts don't vanish just because you move addresses. The calls began almost immediately, an aunt accusing me of abandoning my parents. A cousin sending texts about how Denise cried herself to sleep. Frank's voice snarling through voicemails. Ungrateful. Destroying the family. The guilt clawed at my chest in the quiet hours. I caught myself staring at the phone, wondering if maybe I had been too harsh. Then the memory of Frank's fists pounding Drew's apartment door would return. The splintered frame, the police leading him away in cuffs, and the guilt shifted back into resolve. One evening, while I scrolled through job listings at my thrift store desk, my phone buzzed again. Denise. Against my better judgment, I answered. Blair, please, she said, her tone trembling but sharp underneath. The power's been shut off. The internet's down. I had to reschedule my appointment because the insurance was declined again. You can't just leave us like this. We're your family. Her words struck like a hook cast in familiar waters. Once I would have taken the bait. Mom, I said evenly, those are your bills, not mine. Silence. Then her voice snapped like a whip. You heartless girl. After everything we've done for you. But I hung up before she could reel me back in. My hands were steady this time. I turned back to my laptop. Across the kitchen, the light from my teal-painted wall glowed warm against the shadows. For the first time in years, my space looked like a reflection of me, not of their needs. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Tessa. I want to apply for college. Will you help me? I stared at the message, my chest tightening. My little sister, the one who had brushed my wrist at Thanksgiving, the one who had whispered about Dad's plan to kick me out, was reaching across the line that had divided us. I typed back quickly. Yes, always. When she called, her voice was quiet, trembling. I don't even know where to start. FAFSA forms, applications, all of it. Mom says we can't afford college, but I don't want to stay here forever, Blair. The desperation in her words clawed at me. I saw myself at 17, believing escape was impossible. You don't have to stay, Tess, I said. We'll get through the forms together. You'll have options. Her silence on the other end felt like tears she wouldn't let fall. But what if Dad finds out you're helping me? I swallowed hard. Then he finds out. But you're not alone this time. That night, I spread application forms across my table, the teal wall behind me a reminder of the freedom I was building. Each line I highlighted, each document I explained to Tessa over the phone, felt like laying bricks not just for my life, but for hers. For the first time since leaving that house, hope flickered. Not just for me, but for her too. The kitchen table in my little apartment looked like a war zone. FAFSA forms spilled across its scratched surface, sticky notes fluttered from the corners of scholarship applications, and my laptop sat open to half a dozen tabs with deadlines blinking red. Tessa's voice crackled through the speakerphone, fragile but determined. I don't understand half of this, Blair. Why do they make it so hard? Because they want to scare you off, I said, highlighter in hand. But we're not letting them. One box at a time, Tess. Start with your social security number. I pictured her sitting at the dining room table back home, the same table where Dad had called me a leech just weeks before, her head bent over the forms, Mom pacing nearby, Dad muttering at the television. It was dangerous for her even to talk to me. But she'd chosen to anyway. For weeks, we worked in secret. At night, she whispered updates through the phone. During the day, I double-checked her drafts, corrected essays, guided her through confusing questions. Each time, she sounded a little stronger, a little more like someone who believed freedom was possible. Still, the fear hung over her. What if Dad finds out you're helping me? She whispered one evening, voice shaking. Then he finds out, I answered firm. But this time, he won't break you. You have me. The silence that followed was heavy, then soft. Thank you, Blair. By March, the envelopes started arriving. One by one, thick packets addressed to Tessa Thompson showed up in their mailbox. She waited until the house was empty, then texted me pictures. Accepted. Scholarship included. Another came. Accepted. Housing option available. And then, one late afternoon, my phone rang. Tessa's voice burst through, trembling with joy. Blair, I got in. Full tuition. Plus housing. I'm free. I sat back in my chair, tears spilling hot down my cheeks. In my teal-walled apartment, laughter rose out of me. Real and unrestrained. The sound startled even me. On move-in day, I drove down to campus in my car, the one Dad had tried to claim, and met Tessa outside her dorm. She stood taller somehow, shoulders squared, her eyes shining with something I recognized. Hope. Think they'll be mad I left? She asked softly as we carried her box of clothes up 3 flights of stairs. They already are, I said. but anger is their chain, not yours. Don't wear it. We set up her room, twin bed, desk, a window overlooking the campus quad. Students hurried by outside, their laughter filling the air. It was a world Denise and Frank could never control. As we stood in her new space, Tessa's voice cracked. I didn't think I'd ever get out. You showed me I could. I hugged her tightly, whispering into her hair. I just lit the path. You walked it. For a moment, I felt the weight of something shifting not just for her, but for me too. Because guiding her was proof that the cycle could be broken. That night, back in my apartment, my phone buzzed again. A new message from Tessa. They lost the house. Bank took it. They're blaming me now. I stared at the words, my chest tightening. Denise and Frank, stripped of their control, still reaching for someone to blame. I set the phone down slowly, my reflection staring back from the dark screen. A year had passed since the Thanksgiving that shattered everything. Now, the teal wall in my apartment glowed softly under the golden light of a single lamp. The table was smaller than the one in my parents' house, the dishes mismatched from thrift stores, but the air hummed with something richer than perfection peace. A roasted turkey sat in the center, surrounded by bowls of stuffing, cranberry sauce, and my sweet potato casserole. I had cooked it all myself. Not out of obligation but joy. Drew raised her glass of red wine, Max poured sparkling cider for Tessa, and Baxter the golden retriever wagged hopefully at our feet. To found family, Drew said, her voice warm, and to boundaries worth keeping. We clinked glasses. The sound was light, musical, and for a moment I simply breathed it in. Tessa looked different now. Not taller, but steadier, her confidence blooming after 3 months on campus. She carried herself with a quiet strength, free from the shadow of our parents' manipulations. This is better than anything at home, she admitted softly, scooping mashed potatoes onto her plate. Her words stirred something bittersweet. Home. The word no longer fit where Denise and Frank lived, or maybe it never had. After dinner, while Max cleared plates and Drew fussed over dessert, Tessa and I sat shoulder to shoulder at the kitchen counter, spreading out scholarship renewal forms. They lost the house last month, she said quietly, pen tapping the paper. Dad's blaming the bank, the economy, the neighbors, everyone but himself. They're staying with Uncle Rick for now, and that comes of the Satadivans term. I nodded, glancing toward the small stack of envelopes sitting unopened on my bookshelf. 5 of them, all bearing my parents' handwriting. They'd been arriving steadily since spring, thick with words I wasn't ready to read. Do you think you'll ever open them? Tessa asked, her voice gentle. I don't know, I admitted. Some days I want to. Other days, I think leaving them sealed is the healthiest choice. She studied me, her expression a mirror of the uncertainty I carried. They still blame you, you know, for everything. But honestly, they're just facing what would have happened anyway. Your money only postponed it. Her honesty cut sharp, but it also freed me. She was right. I hadn't caused their downfall, I had simply stopped shielding them from it. Later, after dessert and laughter and too many dishes piled in the sink, I stepped onto the small balcony with a mug of tea. The November air bit at my cheeks, the city lights flickering against the night sky. Behind me, Drew and Max bickered good-naturedly over pie slices, and Tessa's laughter rose above them, bright and unburdened. I wrapped my arms around myself, listening to the sounds of this new family, the family I chose. The kind that asked nothing but honesty. The kind that gave more than it took. Still. My eyes drifted back to the envelopes. They sat like ghosts on my shelf. Waiting. Maybe they held apologies. Maybe more accusations. Maybe both. I thought of Frank's face that day in the driveway. Keys slipping from his hand as his authority crumbled. I thought of Denise's voice on the phone, sharp with manipulation. I thought of Tessa's text. They're blaming me now. What do I do? A year later, I had answers for myself, but not for her. I'd drawn my line in the sand, brick by brick, proof by proof. Yet the question lingered, heavy as the November sky. Is forgiveness ever worth reopening the door you fought so hard to close? Or is the truest legacy the boundary itself, the line that says, enough? I sipped my tea, the steam rising into the cold night. Behind me, the sound of laughter and clinking forks spilled out through the doorway. I let the warmth wash over me, not just from the cup, but from the life I had built. This Thanksgiving wasn't about survival, it was about peace. But the unopened letters waited still, daring me to decide.